Okay, well, maybe we'll get started. So today we've got questions and answers regarding JobKeeper. So just for everyone's understanding, there are two stimulus packages available at the moment. One of them is the increased job seeker, which is done through Centrelink. So we are not covering that today because that's to do with Centrelink, and anyone that wants to know more about the job seeker should probably speak to Centrelink. And the job seeker relates to unemployed people. Today we're actually going to talk about JobKeeper. Everyone's getting confused about the two, and it's a bit silly that they sort of made the names very similar, but the JobKeeper is in relation to businesses. So it relates to a reimbursement of wages to employees of $1,500 a fortnight, but it also does now include business owners. And I think this is where most of the business owners are getting confused because they think they might need to have employees in order to be eligible, and it's not necessarily the case. So what we'll do is we'll go through some of the questions that have been sent through to us before I started the session today, and we've got 4 questions that most people have asked. So I'll probably run through them first just to get started, and then you're welcome to, I'll unmute everyone after these questions, or you're welcome to just pop the questions in the comments section as well as we go along. So just for a bit of background, the JobKeeper is a reimbursement of wages of up to $1,500 a fortnight for all eligible employees. And it covers a 6-month period, so it's between April to September. And it's for businesses to keep those businesses going over this difficult period. Originally, the government announced that it would be only for employees, but they have extended that now to include the business owners, because sometimes the business owners are not employees of their business. And it does include the sole traders as well. There is quite strict eligibility criteria, and it's important to go through that list to see if you are eligible. The main one being that you do have to have a drop in income. And they are comparing the income to the same time last year as a base test. There is an alternative test as well. But generally, as a small business, you need to have dropped income or turnover by more than 30%. And you can qualify based on a monthly comparison, but you can also use the quarter as well. So it's important to probably understand what your income was last year, what it is this year, and do the calculations to see if you are eligible. So that's really the first step. And then the second step is looking at your employees. So I'll jump in with the questions. I'll just share my screen quickly. Hopefully you guys can see that. All right, so the main question everyone's asking is, do you have to have a 30% drop in turnover to qualify? Well, yes, you do. There is another test for charities. So I'm pretty much only focusing on small businesses in this session, because charities do have their own sort of unique circumstances, but for charities, it's only a 15% drop. So small businesses in Australia need to show that there's been more than a 30% drop in turnover. So turnover is basically income. It doesn't include all income, because it does exclude income that's for no consideration or income that's derived overseas, for example, but generally it's your sales. So you look at the sales from last year and you look at the sales this year and you compare the two, and if there has been a 30% drop, or you think there will be a forecasted drop in say the month of April or the month of May, then you qualify as well. If you haven't experienced a drop yet, but you feel that perhaps over the coming months you are going to be impacted, then you may qualify later. So let's say by June, July, your income drops off quite a lot. It means that you can qualify at that point in time. So it is a rolling test. So, you know, if you're not eligible yet, that's fine. You just wait until you are eligible, then you enroll, and then hopefully you get the reimbursement back from the government. So the calculation, we've had a lot of questions about the calculation, and we have a calculator that we've developed to quickly punch in your sales figures for either the month or the quarter, and it calculates whether there's been more than a 30% drop. And it gives you a guideline as to when you qualify. So use that calculator, but really more importantly, have a look at your bookkeeping system or accounting system to see, you know, what your sales were, and then work backwards to see how far you have actually dropped. I think it's easy for businesses that have shut shop because they've been forced to not open to the public, but for the other businesses that are cyclical in nature or, you know, have ongoing contracts, it's not as easy to calculate. So you probably need to spend a bit more time looking at that and looking at what you've invoiced and how much cash you've received, for example. So that's the first question, just quickly. Second question is the drop in turnover calculated on the cash received or invoices issued? Now, the ATO didn't publish any guidance on this until last Friday. They've published a bit more today. And what they're saying is if you report your BAS to the ATO on a cash basis, then you can choose to use the accrual method or the cash method. And what that means is if you're using the cash method, it means everything that's hit your bank account is considered income in that month or in that quarter. On the accrual basis, it's based on when you issued your invoices. So, you know, a lot of businesses issue invoices. They may not get paid for, you know, a month or two, but the income is still reported in that month in which the invoice is issued. So you can choose between the two methods if you are reporting your BASs on a cash basis. So yeah, that is another tricky confusion for a lot of businesses because they don't really know what the cash is that they've received. Sometimes they don't know where to go in their accounting system to have a look at the reports. Reach out if you have any questions, but the systems are there to help you to get that income pretty quickly. That's the second question. The third question, this is very, very topical at the moment. Do you have to pay all your employees the $1,500 a fortnight? Yes, you do. So the JobKeeper is a reimbursement back to you as the business owner. So if you haven't paid the wages, then you're not entitled to the reimbursement. So this is obviously causing a lot of cash issues for businesses because they may not have the cash at the moment to pay their staff. But the government is saying, you know, borrow money from the bank or find another way to fund your payroll, especially for this month that we're in now, which is April, because you do need to pay a minimum of $1,500 a fortnight to each employee for this month in order to be reimbursed in early May. So that $1,500 is gross, so tax is taken out of that. It's roughly $200 worth of tax, so it ends up being roughly $1,300 net that you pay your employees. And the way the ATO sort of knows whether you've paid or not is because you do have to process the payroll through STP, and that STP information ends up with the ATO, and they know, you know, what payroll you've run for the month and how much you've actually paid each of your employees. All right, we'll probably have more questions about that, but that's generally the gist of it. Can a sole trader who has employees also qualify for the JobKeeper? Yes. So this is to do with allowing the business owners to nominate one individual to claim the JobKeeper. So for a sole trader, that's themselves, because a sole trader can't employ themselves, so they are covered. If it's a partnership, it's one of the partners that you choose. If it's a trust, it's one of the adult beneficiaries that you choose. And if it's a company, it's one of the directors or shareholders. So those individuals can be nominated as a business nomination. They don't need to be on the payroll, and they don't need to physically be paid those wages because the entity receives the $1,500 from the government. So if you're a sole trader and you've experienced a downturn in income, the best thing to do is go into your MyGov ID and put in your election to be nominated so that you can be paid back from the government. And it's the same with, you know, trusts. Not always, you know, do the beneficiaries get a wage, but the government is saying that one of those beneficiaries can actually be reimbursed. So that's that question. And that's it actually for the main questions that have come through. So I will unmute everyone and see what questions you have. We've had a few messages come through. How do we calculate, is it going to be used for calculating workers' compensation? If I have a top up of 1,000 a fortnight of staff, more than usual wages, do we need to pay workers' comp? So I'm guessing the question is about insurance, workers' comp insurance?
Yes, that's correct.
I believe it is included. So there is a bit of controversy because the insurance companies are now charging premiums on wages that are probably higher than they were before.
Yeah.
So yes, it is a direct cost for the business owner. So not only are they having to probably pay more superannuation for a lot of the employees, but they are also paying workers' compensation as well.
I understand the superannuation for the top-up component is optional, but that's why I wondered if maybe the workers' comp was as well.
It's not optional. So the superannuation isn't optional. It is a requirement. But the workers' comp, it would depend on your insurance company. So I have seen already some clients engaging with their insurance brokers and insurance companies. And the feedback has been that that increased wage burden is used to calculate the workers' comp premium. But again, it does depend on the insurance company and what industry you're in. So it is a direct cost.
Okay. Well, thanks for letting me know. I'll follow up with the insurer.
I know it is sad that that's actually happening, but this is one of the side effects. And I guess this is one of the things that business owners should be conscious of, that it's not just that you're being reimbursed for that 1,500. You do also have other costs associated with this. So it's important to put those other costs into your cash flow because you may not end up, you know, square. You may still be out of pocket at the end of it. So the next question is, what if you weren't trading last year? Now that is a good question. And this is something the ATO is actually publishing today. So up until last Friday, there was no process for these business owners to apply directly to the ATO. We've been telling everyone, try and ring the ATO to see what your position is. We understand today that the ATO has sort of tied this up and they've worked out a way for these business owners to apply, because obviously there's no comparison to last year. And I understand the ATO just wants to understand how your income has dropped perhaps since you started, and they may require some other information. So they might want, you know, monthly income over the last, say, you know, 9 months or whatever to see a progressive drop. But do keep up to date with the ATO website because that stuff is actually being released today. Okay, so the next question, what do you do for staff that have selected no on the nomination form? So they may have selected no because they may have said yes to another employer, I'm guessing. If they've declined because they've chosen another employer, they no longer become an eligible employee. So no, you don't pay them. So those employees have to choose which employer they want. And that employer then claims on behalf of those employees. So This is quite common where you have long-term casual staff that have more than one job. So those employees are just not included when you enroll and when you select the employees to be reimbursed for. So each employee obviously has their own tax file number, and that tax file number is included in the ATO system for reimbursement. So those employees can't double dip. You can't have two TFNs in the system being reimbursed. It's only one. So you just got to make sure when you do the payroll that you do not include them in the JobKeeper submission to the ATO, and you will then only be reimbursed for the other employees. And the second part of the question was they would lose some of their benefits. Yeah. This is one of the, again, another side effect of this stimulus is that there's a lot of interplay with the fair work conditions and how employee benefits and entitlements continue on over these 6 months. And it does depend on the award, it does depend on the industry. So it is wise to get advice from Fair Work as to how those benefits are affected. Because they're obviously going to be employed by two different people. Okay, next question. If we don't use STP because it's closely held, do we have to use STP for this April pay? I believe you do, because the STP system is the only way for the ATO to work out how to reimburse the money. However, if you've been nominated as one of those individuals that's one of the owners of the business, I understand you don't need to do that because you're not on the payroll. But if the owners of the business are on the payroll, as in you're processing wages and withholding tax and paying super, then you should be lodging that information through STP so that they're captured as an employee reimbursement. Does that make sense? No, don't know if Louise is still there, but yeah, so if you're on the payroll and you're withholding tax and paying the super, then the information should go through the STP system. If you're a business owner nomination, then no, it doesn't, because the business is nominating that employee, that individual, and the business receives the $1,500. Next question from Patsy. Is there a minimum annual turnover as a sole trader? No, there isn't. You just need to have, so there are some integrity rules around this. You need to have been in active business at 1st of March. Just let me make sure I've got the correct dates. Yeah, 1st of March, you should have been operating a business and been carrying on that business in Australia. So it does exclude, businesses that have just started or businesses that ended before 1st of March. So there's no turnover requirement. It's just that you were operating a business and now you're suffering because of what's happened with COVID. So yeah, there are obviously thresholds at the other end, maximum thresholds, but no minimum. Does that answer your question, Patsy?
Yes, yeah, I've got like a small business. We've got another business as well, which would definitely qualify, but I run off my own ABN as well and have a small business. And I was just wondering, is there actually a minimum because my husband is a sole trader, so he's fine, he qualifies. And then, I have my own ABN and I run my own business, but it's kind of just an on the side business. And then we also have another business, a new business, which is run as a trust. But that has only been running since September. So that's where you're saying, and then we do have employees on there, but we need to wait and see because that's a new business. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So hopefully today when the ATO announces how you can apply under the alternative test, because you've only got 9 months-ish worth of income.
Because I was trying to work out, do I apply through for me through my ABN, or do I apply as a beneficiary of the trust? Like, which business do I, because I can only receive it once, and that's why I've asked. Yeah, if it's if there is a minimum annual turnover, yeah, that would differentiate which one I go for. But yeah, you answered my question, so thanks.
Yeah, so you'll get, hopefully you might get it for the employees in the trust, depending on whether the ATO is satisfied that you've had a drop in income. And then you can choose whether you claim it under your sole trader business, or whether you claim it, or you nominate yourself as a business individual to receive it.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
Next question, 2 working directors, you pay super and tax, can you both get the JobKeeper allowance? So the condition that employees be included, so for them to be eligible, they need to have been employed by the business at 1st of March. So directors are treated the same as employees if they are active in the business and actually performing a role, and they're being paid a consistent wage for which tax is withheld and superannuation is paid. So correct, you can claim for both directors, provided you meet the other tests, the reduction in income, and if you're not excluded. So yes, you can. If you've not been lodging that information through to the tax office though, as in you haven't included the PAYG on your BASs, if you haven't paid the superannuation, if you haven't lodged STP, then it's going to be very difficult to prove, I guess, that they were actually employees, or both of you were actually employees. So that's something to think about. So all of that paperwork that might be missing could mean that you have to manually go to the ATO and explain why perhaps you didn't lodge STP and you haven't paid the super, for example. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's brilliant, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so Jenny, what happens if you're eligible in April but then in May your turnover goes up? Good question. We understand that once you're in, so once you qualify, you stay in the system. You don't have to continue to meet the fall in turnover test every month after that. So what that means is, like you say, if you've met it in April, if you're down, if your income is down more than 30% in April, you are probably eligible to claim for the month of April the wages in that month. If suddenly then in May and June your business picks up again and you're back to where you were before, the ATO is, and you can look at on the ATO site, and it does give you examples like this, they're saying that that's fine. You will stay in the system for 6 months, which means that you're entitled to that JobKeeper payment for the 6 months. There is a requirement to lodge a monthly report to the tax office at the end of every month. And I think it's by the 7th of every month. And in that report, I'm sure it's a form that they're going to have. In there, you will confirm the employees you're claiming for, and you will provide your income figures for the month. And there were questions raised about that, but we understand that the ATO is gathering that information to see how everyone is going. Not necessarily to drop you out of the system if your income's gone back up. So does that make sense? So even if you're not qualifying for it yet, and you qualify for it, say in May or June, and then your income goes back up again in August, September, it's fine. You still stay in it until the end.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. You've answered my question.
No worries. All right, so next question. Do we need to pay ourselves this month to be repaid as an eligible business participant? No. So the eligible business participant is a nomination done by the business, and the business receives the $1,500. So there's no requirement to pay the business owners if they've been nominated. And if you think about this from a different point of view, the business can receive the $1,500 a fortnight reimbursement, and use it to run the business or use it for rent or, you know, for other costs to keep that business going. It doesn't need to actually pay those nominated business individuals. So it's a little bit different to claiming for the employees. For employees, you physically have to pay them in upfront, but not for the business participants. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks very much, Simona.
No worries. Andrew, how are commission earners viewed? Varying income month to month and quarter to quarter. Yikes. That's a loaded question. So commission earners, are they employees is the question. So under common law, is it an employee-employer relationship? How is their income actually treated? Is it paid like a contractor, or is the amount paid to the employees through payroll? It is a tricky area because I think the ATO ATO and Fair Work are basically saying that people are paid for their time and there are minimum wages there for a reason. And if people are paid by the hour or by the day or whatever, then there is a component that is they are an employee. There might be an additional payment, which is like a commission, or it might be a bonus or whatever in addition to that. But yeah, legally, someone would have to look at what that legal relationship is, whether they are actually employees. I do know many businesses do have a commission system in place, but more often than not, those employees are paid a minimum wage, and then they're given a top up for the performance.
So can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Asking you for a friend, obviously. So there are, in my industry that I work in as a finance broker, commission earners. It's sole commission. There's no retainer or base wage in the mortgage broking industry. Well, in the position that I'm in anyway. So I'm just curious as to what that situation is there, because there's no minimum wage, but I mean, you know, there might be some months, it might be, you know, it's pretty up and down in terms of commission coming in. So it's just a bit of a curious one there.
It is a tricky one, and I'm guessing the person receiving the commission has got an ABN, and they're probably getting a recipient created invoice for the amount they could, yeah. Then that individual is probably a sole trader then. It's a tricky one. Without having a lawyer here to probably bounce off, it is hard to answer. My gut feel is that they're operating as a sole trader, as a contractor, and therefore they could maybe claim, yeah, too many questions. I can come back to you on that one.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I'll look into that one myself and put it up on the site for you to get back to anyone that has that question as well.
Yeah, look, it has been raised quite a few times, and we do have one of our clients who's a HR and IR specialist, and they're getting a lot of questions like this. And they've engaged lawyers to have a look at how it actually contractually works, because it's never so clear cut. There's always terms and conditions in the contracts that can sway it either way. Yeah, sure. So it might depend on the contract as well. That's a good question.
Okay,
Thanks,
I'll have a look. Thank you. Thanks, Mo. Sorry to put a tricky one in there.
No, that's fine. All right, next question. Once business picks up, does the payment stop? No. I think once you're in and you get reimbursed for the full term, which is until the end of September. So, yeah, I think it's 19,000-ish per employee to cover the 13 fortnights. And once you're entitled to it, then you continue to receive it. You do have to make sure, though, you are putting the information through the ATO system, and you are also completing the monthly declaration. Because I'm sure if you're not doing stuff like that, then the ATO systems will probably say no, and they might stop it. I do also know that you can come out of the system, so, which is probably rare, but let's say you've got a business and you've tried to keep it going, but there's no point, you know, you've got to just shut shop and pack up and stop completely. You could decide to maybe just stop the business completely. Or sadly, if there are businesses that go into liquidation or administration, then they fall out of it as well. So yeah, it is there to keep the businesses alive for 6 months, and it's to help the business owners survive as well. But after that, and I guess maybe that's what the message is, you've got a safety net for 6 months, but after that, you know, if you're still carrying a lot of employees, what are you going to do once the payments do stop? Is your business sustainable enough to cover all of those employees later? And in particular, if the employees are accruing benefits or accruing entitlements, I should say, so annual leave and sick leave and long service leave, if you get to the end of September and you start, you know, operating your business without that safety net, you know, can you actually afford to pay out all of those entitlements as well if you're forced to? So yeah. Right, are there any other questions? I'll unmute everyone in case anyone wants to have a chat or wants any further clarification. Fire away.
Well, I'll go again, Simona, if I may.
Yeah, go.
A contractor who is getting paid, a sole trader contractor getting paid by let's say a non-for-profit, their contract amount has gone down from more than 30%. They're going to be eligible for JobKeeper, aren't they?
They should be, yes. So you're saying, so a contractor as in they're providing services they're providing business services of some sort?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, then they should be. Yes, if they have been impacted and the income has dropped by more than 30%, then they certainly should, you know, go through the process of enrolling and, you know, and making sure they have all of the information to put in the paperwork and then to be reimbursed. I guess it's to stop, sole traders that going to Centrelink and claiming JobSeeker. So this JobKeeper is there to try and keep these little businesses going without those business owners having to resort to going to Centrelink, which is obviously it is a harder process to go down that route. So yeah, all of the little businesses out there that have suffered, then do take the time to enrol and go through the process, because it means that you can keep those businesses going for 6 months. Yeah, so nice. Good question.
Couple of dirty ones, sorry, keep you on your toes.
That's all right.
I've just got one as well. I was looking at enrolling, and I went to the MyGov ID, and I found the page really hard to navigate. And then I ended up in MyGov, and it seemed to be I would seem to be able to apply through MyGov.
Yeah.
Which platform is actually the platform that you apply through?
I think it's supposed to be MyGov ID.
Yeah, that's what I thought, and that's everything that I read. But accessing their platform and getting into it and finding it, I couldn't find it, and then I ended up in MyGov by mistake, and I stumbled upon it straight away. So can I apply for it through MyGov?
Look, I think everyone has come out with all different issues that they've had with the ATO systems, and look, even as us as tax agents, we've had our own issues trying to get in for clients and try and apply. I think whichever way the ATO has given you the option to do it, use it. I can't tell you conclusively which side to use, because I know that we've kind of tried multiple times for some of our clients and it hasn't worked, and then we've gone back in and it's worked. And I'm guessing it's because the systems are a bit overloaded and the ATO hasn't sort of catered for all of the permutations. So you've got until the 30th of April, so next Thursday, to enrol, well, to get in the system for the month of April. So try MyGov. If it works through there, then great. If not, go to MyGov ID. And if that still fails and you're still having problems, sadly get on the phone to the ATO and see if they can fix it, or speak to a tax agent, because we've obviously got a different system that we go into, and it is a little bit different and easier for us. So yeah, whatever you can with the tech, because I'm sure the tech has just been updated to deal with this.
Okay, and because one of the questions was like when it said nominate how many employees you have, and then it said if you are a sole trader, don't nominate any. And then anyone else is about to do it, I realised you actually have to put 0 in. You can't just skip that field. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So if it's just yourself and you don't have any employees, it is 0.
Okay.
So a sole trader can't hire themselves.
Yeah.
So there are sole traders that do have employees, so they then put in the details for their employees. But if you don't have any, then it is 0. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it is a bit tricky, I think, for sole traders, because you're not a separate entity, you are the same entity. So you can't claim wages for yourself. Yeah. Whereas if you're a trust or a partnership or a company, it is a different process, because that is a separate legal entity. Yeah. So yeah, look, a lot of the systems have been updated, like Xero, Mile, QuickBooks, all of them have been updated to deal with JobKeeper. Another thing maybe I should mention is that for the month of April, you may not have paid up until now $1,500 minimum in wages to your employees, because some employees are just not paid that much for the work that they do. So you will have to have a look at this, because if you are wanting to claim for those employees, so if you've given them the nomination forms and they've signed them and they want to be included, you do need to make sure that for the month of April they've been paid a minimum of $3,000 gross. And you can actually do like an unscheduled pay run between sort of now and 30th of April to top up the difference. Because most people would be in this scenario. So just make sure when you're going into your payroll and doing it, or your bookkeeper's doing it, the gross wages must be a minimum of $3,000 for the month of April, because there's 2 fortnights in the month of April. If it falls short, then the STP information at the ATO might flag that and go, well, you didn't pay your employees enough, therefore you're not getting reimbursed. So that top up, has to be done separately, or if you've still got a payroll or a pay run due this week or next week, make sure you include that top up in that pay run. And then going forward after that, the minimum will be $1,500 per employee per fortnight, or the equivalent of per month or per week. So you don't have to pay people fortnightly, but it's just the equivalent of that for that month. So there's 13 fortnights in total. So you work backwards to see which employees have been paid correctly, or the total amount, and which ones haven't. The superannuation was raised earlier. I can't remember who raised it. With the superannuation, there may be superannuation owing on top of what you pay the employees. So $1,500 is the minimum per fortnight. Now, if those employees are actually working, let's say, their normal wage is, I don't know, $1,000 a fortnight, and they're actually physically working in the business, superannuation is owing on that amount that those employees have earned. So superannuation is calculated on ordinary times earnings. Super is not payable on the top up if the employee is not working for that top up. Bit confusing, but basically think of it like this. If the employee is working, and their normal hourly rate is whatever it is, and you work backwards to see what their normal wages would be, add super to that, and then whatever you top up doesn't have superannuation. If your employees get paid normally more than $1,500 a fortnight, so let's say they're on a salary, 100K a year, their gross wages is more than $1,500, you have to keep paying super on the total amount you're paying them. So if the amount is $2,000 a fortnight, superannuation is based on the $2,000. So it's still another cost to the employer. It's not like you're getting reimbursed for all of the cost from the government. Does that make sense? Does anyone have questions about that? I see Shella's just asked, is the ATO reporting category allowances? Yes, it is. It is classified as an allowance, and in your payroll system, it should have been updated by now because Xero and Maya and all the rest of it have already done the stuff in the background, but it is set up to be like an allowance for the top up.
Thanks, Simona. I'm just finding I'm on a Mac and Maya haven't updated our Mac.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Okay. I think we've put through payroll manually before all of this sort of came out. So we're talking 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we created our own pay category and called it JobKeeper Top Up. Mm-hmm. And we probably did it wrong in some cases because we just weren't aware of what the rules were going to be. So what we'll probably do is review all of the pay runs for the month of April, maybe do an unscheduled pay run to adjust for anything that we've done wrong. So if we've paid people as a wage instead of an allowance, we will probably rejiggle that to say that, well, actually, no, it should have been this much for allowance and this much for wages, just so the total for the month is actually correct. I know it sounds really creative, but it's not. It's just making sure that wages is wages and allowances is allowances, and the superannuation is calculated correctly on both of them.
All right. So
it can be a bit tricky. There is a lot of information on the ATO website. Or reach out if you have any questions, because it is a case-by-case basis for a lot of businesses. Some employees are on salaries, some are casuals on an hourly rate, and some are working, some aren't. I mean, there's so many permutations.
So,
okay.
Simona.
Yep.
Mark Peasdale here. So
hello, Mark.
How are you going? In Xero at the moment, there's that JobKeeper payment top up. So that's the one
Yes.
you use if they're not working.
That's right.
That's
the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Xero updated their system. I think it was over Easter. So they've set that up automatically for everyone. So yeah, use that one for the top up. Yeah.
Okay. And so then your pay cycle, does it have to match the ATO? Like, does it have to start on the 1st of April? No.
So the way it works is it's a pay run that is paid. So with payroll, how can I explain it? Payroll is deemed to be paid and owing on the day in which you process the pay run and you pay the employees. So even though a fortnight might have started, say, March 20th, and you're now paying it, say, the first week of April, the fact that you've paid it in the first week of April means that it does fall into the month of April, even though it sort of straddles 2 months. So you can continue doing whatever your cycles are, because it could be monthly. We have clients that have monthly pay runs, just as long as the total in that month it is equivalent to the $1,500 a fortnight. So the ATO have a little table on their website that shows you how many fortnights in each month. And just off the top of my head, actually, I think I've got the table in front of me somewhere. I think it's 3,000 minimum for the months of May, June, July, and August. And then September has 3 fortnights. And then October has 2. So yeah, everyone's pay run's different, but if you work backwards and say, yeah, we paid staff 2 times this month, those 2 times have to be a minimum of 3,000 each.
Okay, cool. Yep.
There was another question that Sandy put with the alternative test. Businesses only start in December. Yes, so this is where the ATO will be issuing out some guidance today as to how these type of businesses can apply directly to the ATO. So I can put an update on the website, on our socials, to once I know from the ATO how you do that, because it is a bit of a manual process, I understand, because you'll have to provide probably the income, in that case from December 2019 to probably end of April, and probably show that there is a drop in income to satisfy that decline in turnover test. So yeah, after this session, if the ATO website's up to date, I'll post that on the socials to direct everyone to what they need to do with that one. Because we're all in the dark up until today on that one as well. What was the other question? Did I miss one? Does it have to be 3,250 for the month because a month is longer than 4 weeks? No, it is a minimum of 3. So it can, if you actually took the total payment of 19,500, I think it is, and divided it by 6, it actually ends up being more than 3,000. But from the ATO's point of view, it's a minimum of 3,000. And it's based on each of those fortnights that fall within each month. So it doesn't necessarily need to be 3,250, depending on how often you're paying your staff. Does that make sense? Oh, we've got another question. Do we know, oh, okay, the business was not in operation in March 19 with their casual staff. If the business was not in operation in March, no. So the casual staff have to have been employed for 12 months as at 1st of March. So no, any casual staff that have been employed after 1st of March 19 are not included. So yeah, if you're stuck with calculating the drop in turnover, because I've had a lot of questions going, how do I calculate a drop in turnover? Do I divide this by that or this or that? You can go to our website. We have a download, a free Excel download. You can download and put in your figures for each of the months or the quarters, and it'll calculate and tell you if you're eligible. Generally, you'd go into your accounting system and run a report to see what their income was, and that's what you use. There's stuff you exclude, you know, it needs to be business income. So you don't include in there stuff like if you went and sold your car last year, your personal car, you don't include that in there, for example. It's only business income, and it has to have a connection with Australia. So foreign sourced income is not included. It's, you know, taxable supplies in Australia is included. Another thing to note actually is you need to be a business. So passive income is not included. So holding property and renting it doesn't mean you're running a business. And a lot of people are confused by that as well. So the ATO is pretty clear on that. Unless you are a property developer or you have a portfolio of property and you're running it as a business. So generally just holding an investment property and getting rental income is not included. It's considered passive income and not business income. So yeah, do we have any other questions before we wrap up? Okay. All right. Well, I might log off now. Oh, hang on, one more. Oh no, it's just to say thanks. No worries, everyone. If you have any further questions, just reach out on the socials, or you know, or find us on the internet, and just ask. That you're not alone if you're confused and you don't know what's going on, because trust me, even the professionals like us, we've spent weeks reading legislation, trying to understand and get our heads around it. So it's confusing for us as well. But yeah, we hope now, as at today, we're in a better position than we were last week, and probably better most business owners, because we're having to deal with it in much bigger volumes than everyone else. So hope you have fun with that, and hopefully everyone's eligible and you can keep your businesses going.
Thank you so much. That's brilliant.
No worries.
Thanks.
Enjoy your day, everyone.
Thanks very much, Simona, and the chamber. Very
No
useful.
worries. All right, enjoy your day, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya. Bye. Bye.